Russia's forces have made further gains in at least 3 locations along the eastern front in Ukraine, including an advance in the northern Kharkiv region, again highlighting Kyiv's need for ammunition and weapons from the United States and other allies. Russia's tactical advances have increased drastically and reflect the new tempo on the battlefield since the fall of Avdiivka in February earlier this year. To discuss matters further and how Russia plans to keep proceeding, for more on this, we are being joined by Dr. Sergey Markov, who's the former spokesman for President Vladimir Putin, former member of the Russian parliament and director of the Institute of Political Studies and Russian political scientist, joining us right here on WION World is One. A pleasure to have you here, Mr. Markov. I wanted to now immediately start getting your thoughts on this. Russia's military tactics, talk to us about those as Ukraine demands more air defense units and Patriot missiles. Is Russia kind of stepping up the pace before those American weapons make it to the Ukrainian front lines again?
Russian army not increase the offensive against Ukrainian army.
Okay.
Russia don't put its schedule according to the schedule of the American weaponry. It's no. Russian army still has no big offensive. And all military analysts in the world expected that such kind of big Russian offensive could be on the summertime, but maybe no, maybe yes. Nobody knows exactly the strategic operation in Russian military general headquarters. But Russia now uses the tactic of so-called few thousand small hits against Ukrainian army, and Russia waiting that in the some of the part of the Ukrainian fronts it will be a collapse of Ukrainian military units, and it's exactly what happening. And the main reason, it's not only some increasing of the speed of Russia taking some of the, frankly speaking, small villages on the in the Donetsk region, Kharkiv region, but most important, the reason of why it happened, it's because Ukrainian soldiers just left this part of the front. And we know that it will be more American weaponry, but it will be no more good Ukrainian soldiers. Because if you look at the news, you can see that hundreds of thousands Ukrainian men now try to cross the border and to leave Ukraine because they don't want to go to by mobilization to the front to take part in those war, because they understand that Ukraine has no chance to win war with Russia, and also because they understand this is not Ukrainian war against Russia. It's American war against Russia, and Americans use Ukrainians as their proxy army. So to
Mr.
play
Markov,
their life
yes,
interest of Biden.
Mr. Markov, I just wanted to now come in, and these are things, of course, they've been discussed ever since 2022 or February of that year. The world over, or I would say at least in certain parts of the world, to put it more correctly, Russia is seen as the aggressor here, that Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. This is the 3rd year of the war. Russia continues to pound Ukraine. That is the narrative which we see from some parts of the world. From your part of the world, sir, I want to understand from you, how do you justify the actions which are taking place on the front lines? Does Russia see this as its own territory which it needs to cede again? Does Russia see this as a threat from NATO, that they don't want NATO on the front lines? And in case that is the case, then what about Finland, which also shares a border with Russia, and NATO forces are positioned there as well? But that is not a point of contention between Russia and Finland, but Ukraine is. How do you differentiate the two, and what is the reason that Russia sees with its current onslaught?
It's very simple. Russia doesn't need new territories, and Russia doesn't need territories in Ukraine, because Russia is the biggest country in the world, and we have a lot of territories in the east which we should, economically develop and so on. What Russia needs in Ukraine to take away the real threat of the new big war, because we strongly believe that United States occupy Ukraine from 2014, when Ukrainian overthrew last democratically elected president of Ukraine, and Americans imposed Russophobic anti-Russia dictatorship to the Ukrainian people, and Americans making anti-Russia from Ukrainian people, from Ukrainian state. And Americans has a dream, has planned to create a very big, strong anti-Russia from Ukraine, and then to have very big war. So Russia started small war in order to avoid big war in future. So now Russia will continue its military attack until the moment when United States of America, who is a real dictator of the Ukraine, would agree that this violence with using both terrorist methods, creation or anti-Russia from the Ukrainians, who is frankly speaking ethnically Russians, 80% of them. And if this plan of formation of anti-Russia will be stopped. Putin calls it is denazification. What means denazification? It means that all neo-Nazi groups should be prohibited, and neo-Nazi groups used by Americans for violence formation of anti-Russia. So if Americans agree, yes, Russia immediately will stop fighting.
Mr. Markov, I just want to now put a little more focus on what I asked earlier. If you can just pinpointedly answer that. There are NATO forces in Finland as well. Of course, the Baltic states are also NATO nations. What is the specific issue when it comes to Ukraine? I understand there are cultural similarities when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. I understand the Soviet Union, the common factor there, which also has existed in the past. But if we solely look at it from the lens of NATO forces, they are positioned on several other borders of Russia. But when it comes to the Ukrainian-Russian border, that is where Russia does not want NATO forces. How do you draw that distinction? What is the issue if Ukraine also becomes a NATO nation? Because several other neighbors of Russia are already part of NATO.
It's very easily. From our point of view, Finland is anti-Russian but democratic countries, and that's why Finnish government will not start war against Russia, because Finnish government represents the interests of Finnish people who want peace. But in Ukraine, we have American dictatorship, terroristic dictatorship, which use Ukrainians as slaves. And in any moment when Americans want Ukrainian proxy army to start war against Russia and some of the Russian regions like Donbass and Crimea, this war will be started. So this is the main difference. Finland is a democratic country. Yes. Ukrainians under the pressure of the American dictatorship.
Mr. Markov, also, as you mentioned, Russia does not need more territories. Till when do you feel Russia will keep inching forward in those front lines towards the eastern part of Ukraine? What is the end goal there? Is it, do they wish to take over Kyiv? Does Russia wish to take over Kyiv? Is it just the coastal regions? Do they limit themselves to Odessa? Till how far inside Ukraine does Russia want to go before they say, okay, fine, this is now the end of the war?
It's very simple. Of course, majority in Russia believes that the main Russian cities, who is really Russian cities, as Kyiv. Kyiv was capital of Russia during 2 centuries. And Odessa is also 100% and Russian city, so as Kharkiv. And of course, most of the Russians dream that those big cities will be part of the Russia. But same time, on the practical level, I would say the Russian government understands that this war over these big cities could be very bloody and very big. That's why Russia, I think, would agree if Russian people who is Ukrainian citizens and live in those big cities will be not Russian citizens, but only if those Russian people will be not under the Russophobic anti-Russian dictatorship. So Russia will continue its military operation until America, United States of America, will stop terroristic dictatorship of the Ukrainian people and will allow people to speak Russian language, will allow Russian Orthodox Church to be on those territory, and will stop formation this military neo-Nazi regime with a big plan of to start new war. So when United States will stop its plan to start new war against Russia by using Ukrainian proxy army, after this, Russia will stop its military operation.
Mr. Markov, now the next part, I want to just quickly ask you one more question. This is something which is a little more on a personal front. It's not to do with war tactics or geopolitics. You worked closely with the Russian president. You've of course been part of the Russian parliament. I wanted to understand from you if there's anything that you can share regarding the man who is Vladimir Putin, who everyone understands as and knows as the Russian president only. You've known him in a different sphere as well. You've known and worked with him closely as well. How does he see geopolitics at the moment or at the time when you worked with him, and you feel from his perspective or his thought process, what are his thoughts on the American leadership? Would he prefer Trump if he comes to power, or does he prefer Biden? Because he made a statement and he said Biden is predictable. So, and he left it at that. And he's a master of his words. He spoke just one line. But again, that makes everyone think what is going on in his head. If you can share some light on that.
Yeah, a few things how I understand Vladimir Putin geopolitical views. First of all, small but important. There are no hopes on Donald Trump. Okay. We know very much that Donald Trump already was the president, and deep state of United States more strong than American president. Donald Trump was not able to stop conflict with Russia, and he will be not able again to stop war against Russia. It's first. Secondly, Biden, first of all, he is very aggressively anti-Russian. And secondly, Biden mentally unable. And it means that we have so-called shadow team of Joe Biden, who in fact not elected and who will run and who run now by United States of America. It's very dangerous, where there are no responsibility on one leader. As about United States of America, Vladimir Putin main idea is that United States of America leadership is declining, and that's why America tried to make reset of its leadership, and America prepared for the big, many decades competition with China. But for those competition with Russia, with China, America wants to take control over the Russian territory, Russian government, and Russian nuclear weaponry, because Americans want Russia to be their proxy regime, but not a friendly ally of China. Also, important characteristic from Vladimir Putin that United States not just want unipolar world, but United States not able more to be leader of this unipolar war. And another also important things which could be for the past, but it's important even now if we look at the views of Putin. Vladimir Putin is very pro-Western politician. He wants Russia to be part of Europe. And he told, we agree with leadership of United States of America, but only if we are beneficial from those leadership. But if Americans still stolen money from us, if Americans making a Russophobic anti-Russia dictatorship of Ukraine, if Americans prohibited Orthodox Christianity in Ukraine, we cannot be satisfied by American leadership. That's why we have to be against America, because Americans very bad to us.
All right, I will not add anything to that, but then perhaps we'll leave the other questions for another interaction. That was Dr. Sergey Markov speaking very clearly on what he feels about the things that I've asked him, of course, on current affairs and also on Vladimir Putin's thought process regarding geopolitics and what Russia feels about America at the moment. This is Dr. Sergey Markov, former spokesman for President Putin and former member of the Russian parliament. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on this.
Thank you.